Jake Morrison's eyes opened slowly. His head felt heavy, like he had been sleeping for years. Everything around him looked strange and wrong. The walls were made of some kind of clear crystal that glowed with soft blue light. The air smelled different too, like metal and something sweet he could not name. He tried to sit up, but something was wrong with his chest. Looking down, Jake saw a thick needle stuck right into his heart. The needle was as wide as his thumb and made of black metal that seemed to move and twist. Thin tubes ran from the needle to machines he had never seen before. The machines hummed and clicked, making sounds like they were alive. The needle did not hurt, but Jake could feel it pulling something from inside him. It felt like the machine was drinking his blood, but not his blood. Something deeper, something that made him who he was. Jake, thank God you are awake. He turned his head and saw a woman in a white coat standing next to his bed. She had brown hair and kind eyes, but she looked tired and scared. Jake knew this face, but could not believe what he was seeing. Lisa. His voice came out rough and dry. Lisa Kane. But you are dead. You died 3 years ago at Europa Station. Dr. Lisa Kane moved closer to his bed. Her hands shook as she checked the machines connected to the needle in his chest. I am not dead, Jake, but I wish I was. We are in terrible trouble. Jake tried to remember what had happened to him. The last thing he could recall was flying his ship near Jupiter. He was looking for signs of the aliens that had attacked Europa Station. Then everything went black. Where are we? Jake asked. We are on their ship, Lisa said. She pointed to the crystal walls around them. The Draknari took us. They look like dragons, but they are much worse than any dragon from old stories. As if her words had called them. Jake heard heavy footsteps in the hallway outside. The sound was like thunder, slow and deep. Lisa's face went white with fear. They are coming, she whispered. Listen to me quickly. The needle in your chest is keeping you alive, but it is also stealing something from you. The Draknari need what is inside human minds. They call it temporal essence. It is like the part of us that understands time. Jake looked at the needle again. Now he could see that it was not just taking something from him. It was glowing softly, and the glow pulsed with his heartbeat. Every time his heart beat, he felt a little more empty inside. Why do they want this essence? He asked. They use it to travel through time, Lisa said. Their whole race is dying, and they jump from one time to another, looking for ways to save themselves. But every time they do it, they need more human essence. The footsteps were getting closer. Lisa looked at the door with terror in her eyes. I have been pretending to help them, she said very quietly. I act like I want to study their science, but really, I am learning how to stop them. Jake, you are special. Your essence is stronger than other humans. That is why they want you so badly. How long have I been here? Jake asked. 6 months, Lisa said. But time works differently on this ship. Outside, it might have been years, or just days. I do not know anymore. The door to the room opened with a sound like breaking glass. What came through was the biggest creature Jake had ever seen. It walked on 2 legs like a man, but its skin was covered in scales that changed color like oil on water. Its head was long like a dragon from old books, with teeth as long as Jake's fingers. When it breathed, small sparks came from its nose. But the strangest thing about the creature was its eyes. They were not the eyes of an animal. They were smart, ancient, and very tired. The human wakes, the creature said. Its voice was deep and rough, but it spoke perfect English. I am Vorthok, the Eternal. I have been waiting to speak with you, Jake Morrison. Jake tried to move, but the needle in his chest kept him pinned to the bed. What do you want from me? Vorthok moved closer. Jake could feel heat coming from the creature's body. I want what all of my people want. Survival. Your species has something we need. Something that can save us from dying with our timeline. You mean you are going to kill me? No, Vorthok said, and Jake was surprised to hear sadness in the creature's voice. Death would be wasteful. The needle keeps you alive while we harvest your temporal essence. You will live for many years, maybe decades, while we slowly take what we need. Lisa stepped forward. How many humans are you doing this to? Vorthok turned his huge head toward her. In this timeline, soon, all of them. We have found a version of Earth where your species never left their home system. Billions of humans, all with pure temporal essence, all waiting for harvest. Jake felt his heart stop for a moment. You mean there are other Earths? Many Earths, Vorthok said. Many versions of your species. We have harvested from dozens of timelines already. But this Earth is special. These humans are not changed by space travel or alien contact. Their essence is perfect for our needs. Through the crystal walls of the room, Jake could see outside, the ship for the first time. What he saw made him forget how to breathe. There was Earth's moon, but it was covered with huge cities and metal rings that sparkled in the sunlight. Ships moved between the cities like insects around flowers. This is not our Earth? Jake whispered. No, Vorthok said. This is Earth 47, a timeline where humanity built great cities but never left their solar system. They have no weapons that can hurt us, no knowledge of space war. They are perfect prey. Lisa's hands closed into fists. You cannot do this. Those are innocent people. Innocent people die in every timeline, Vorthok said. At least their deaths will have meaning. Their essence will save my people from the temporal collapse that threatens us all. Jake watched the cities on the moon and thought about all the people living there. People who had no idea that dragon-like aliens were about to steal their lives. People just like him, with families and dreams and hopes for the future. The needle in his chest pulsed again, and Jake felt another piece of himself being pulled away. But this time, something else happened. For just a moment, he could feel the ship around him. He could sense the machines and the other needles, and the other humans connected to them. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds. All lying in beds like his. All having their essence slowly drained away. I will make you a deal, Jake Morrison, Vorthok said. Help us willingly, and we will be quick about harvesting this Earth. Fight us, and we will make it last for generations. Jake looked at Lisa, then at Vorthok, then at the cities on the moon. Somewhere in those cities were people eating dinner, children playing, families watching the stars. And all of them were about to die unless he found a way to stop it. The needle pulsed again, stealing another piece of his soul. 3 days passed before Vorthok came back to see Jake. During those days, Lisa stayed close to his bed, pretending to study the machines while really trying to find ways to help him escape. The needle in Jake's chest kept pulling at his essence, and each day he felt a little more empty inside. Jake had started to notice things about the ship that he missed before. Sometimes he could hear voices in his head, whispers that seemed to come from far away. Lisa told him these were other humans connected to the harvesting machines in different parts of the ship. There are so many of them, Jake said one morning, when the voices were especially loud. How long has this been going on? Years, Lisa said sadly. Maybe decades. The Drachnary have been jumping from timeline to timeline, taking humans from each one. You are just the newest. When Vorthok finally returned, he brought something with him that made Jake's blood turn cold. It was a clear box filled with glowing liquid, and floating inside the liquid was something that looked like a small piece of light. The light pulsed like a heartbeat. Do you know what this is, Jake Morrison? Vorthok asked, holding up the box. Jake shook his head, but somehow he already knew the answer would be terrible. This is temporal essence, Vorthok said. Pure human consciousness, separated from its body and refined into usable energy. This small amount came from one of your species, a woman named Mary Collins from Timeline 23. Jake felt sick. You killed her? No, Vorthok said, and his voice was patient like a teacher explaining something simple. Mary Collins lived for 3 years while we harvested her essence. She had time to say goodbye to her family, time to write letters, time to make peace with her fate. When we were finished, she simply went to sleep. Lisa stepped forward, her face angry. That is murder, no matter how you describe it. Vorth's eyes turned to look at her. Dr. Kane, you have been very helpful to us. Your knowledge of human biology has made our harvesting much more efficient. But do not mistake our cooperation for friendship. I only help you because you will kill more people if I do not, Lisa said. Exactly, Vorthok replied. You understand the reality of our situation. Now I hope Jake Morrison will understand as well. The dragon creature moved closer to Jake's bed. Up close, Jake could see that Vorthok's scales were not just changing color. They had pictures on them, tiny moving images like television screens. Jake saw flashes of space battles, dying suns, and creatures he did not recognize. My people are not evil, Jake Morrison, Vorthok said. We are desperate. Our original timeline is collapsing. The stars are going out one by one, and time itself is becoming unstable. We discovered that jumping 2 other timelines could save us, but each jump requires enormous amounts of temporal energy. So you steal it from humans, Jake said. We discovered it in humans, Vorthok corrected. Your species has a unique relationship with time. Other intelligent races we have found do not produce temporal essence. Only humans have this gift. Vorthok touched one of his scales, and suddenly the air above Jake's bed filled with images. Jake saw different versions of Earth floating in space like soap bubbles. In some of them, Earth was green and blue, like he remembered. In others, it was red and dead. In one, Earth was covered with ice, and in another, it was nothing but a ball of rock. These are all real, Vorthok said. Different timelines, where different things happened to your world. In Timeline 12, humans never invented fire. In Timeline 8, they built great cities under the ocean. In Timeline 31, they destroyed themselves with nuclear weapons. Jake stared at the floating Earths. How many are there? Infinite, Vorthok said. But not all of them are accessible to us. We can only reach timelines where certain conditions are met. This timeline, number 47, is perfect. Humans are advanced enough to have strong temporal essence, but not advanced enough to fight back. One of the floating images showed Jake something that made his heart race. It was Earth, but not the Earth from this timeline. It was his Earth, the one he remembered, with orbital stations around it, and ships traveling to other planets. That is, Timeline 1, Vorthok said, noticing what Jake was looking at. Your original home. We have not harvested from it yet, but we will eventually. Unless you help us finish our work here quickly. What do you mean? Jake asked. Vorthok waved his hand and the images disappeared. I offer you a choice, Jake Morrison. Work with us willingly, and we will harvest only the criminals and volunteers from this Earth. There are billions of people here, but we only need a few million to power our next timeline jump. The rest can live normal lives. Jake felt the needle pulse in his chest. And if I refuse, then we will take everyone, Vorthok said simply. Every man, woman, and child on this Earth will be connected to harvesting machines. We will drain this entire timeline dry before moving to the next one. Lisa made a small sound of horror. You cannot be serious. I am always serious, Dr. Kane, Vorthok said. My people have been dying for thousands of years. We will not let sympathy for one species stop us from surviving. Jake closed his eyes and tried to think. Through the needle, he could feel the other humans on the ship. Their pain, their fear, their slow fade into nothing. But he could also feel something else. Something Vorthok probably did not know about. Some of the humans were fighting back. Deep in their minds, where the harvesting machines could not reach, they were staying awake and aware. They were planning something. How long do I have to decide? Jake asked. We reach Earth's orbit in 2 days, Vorthok said. The harvesting arrays will be deployed immediately after our arrival. If you have not agreed to help us by then, we will assume your answer is no. After Vorthok left, Lisa sat down next to Jake's bed. She looked exhausted and scared. "Jake, there is something I have not told you," she said quietly. "I have been in contact with people on this Earth. They know we are coming." Jake opened his eyes. "How they have been tracking the Draknari ships for months," Lisa said. "This timeline's humans are not as helpless as Vorthok thinks. They have built weapons, and they have a plan to fight back." "What kind of weapons?" Lisa pulled a small device from her pocket. It looked like a metal pen, but it hummed with energy. "This disrupts Draknari technology. They have bigger versions that can damage their ships. But they need someone inside this ship to lower the temporal shields when they attack." Jake looked at the device, then at the needle in his chest. "That someone would be me." "Yes," Lisa said. "But Jake, if we do this and fail, Vorthok will make good on his threat. He will harvest every human on this Earth." Jake thought about the voices in his head, the other humans slowly dying throughout the ship. He thought about the floating images of dead Earths, timelines where the Draknari had already taken everything. He thought about his own Earth, Timeline 1, waiting somewhere for its turn to be harvested. "What exactly do they need me to do?" he asked. Lisa's eyes lit up with hope. "The needle in your chest is connected to the ship's main systems. If you can reverse its flow, even for a few minutes, it will overload the temporal shields. That will give the Earth forces a chance to attack. And what happens to me?" Lisa was quiet for a long moment. "I do not know," she finally said. "Reversing the needle's flow might kill you, or it might just disconnect you from the ship's systems. There is no way to know until we try." Jake closed his eyes and felt the needle pulse again, another piece of his essence gone forever. In 2 days, the ship would reach Earth, and millions of people would die unless he found the courage to act through the crystal walls. He could see the moon getting bigger. The cities on its surface looked so peaceful, so unaware of what was coming for them. "Okay," Jake said finally. "Tell them I will do it." Lisa squeezed his hand. "Jake, there is one more thing. The needle is not just taking your essence. It is also downloading your memories, your combat experience, everything you know about fighting. Vorthok wants to use human knowledge to fight something called the Architects." "Who are the Architects?" "I do not know," Lisa said. "But from what I have heard the Draknari say, they are the reason Vorthok's people are so desperate to escape their dying timeline." Jake felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's cold air. Whatever the Architects were, they scared the Draknari enough to make them harvest entire timelines. And now Vorthok wanted to use Jake's military knowledge against them. The needle pulsed again, and this time Jake tried to fight back. Instead of letting it drain his essence, he pushed back, trying to force his consciousness deeper into the ship's systems. For just a moment, it worked. Jake felt his awareness expand throughout the Draknari vessel. He could sense every human connected to the harvesting machines, every alien crew member, every weapon and shield generator, and in the deepest part of the ship, he felt something that made his blood freeze. It was not human, and it was not Draknari. It was something else entirely, something ancient and patient and very, very angry. The Architects were not just Vorthok's enemies. One of them was already on the ship. Jake spent the next day learning to control his connection to the ship. Every time the needle pulsed, he pushed back a little harder. Soon he could feel the entire Draknari vessel like it was part of his own body. He could sense the engines humming, the weapons charging, and the hundreds of humans trapped in harvesting chambers throughout the ship. But he also felt something else. Deep in the ship's core, there was a presence that did not belong. It felt old and patient, like something that had been waiting for a very long time. "Lisa," Jake whispered when she came to check on him. "There is something on this ship. Something that is not Draknari and not human." Lisa looked around nervously. "What do you mean?" I can feel it through the needle. It is in the deepest part of the ship, near the main engines. It knows I am watching it. Lisa sat down next to his bed. Her face was pale. Jake, I need to tell you something. I have been studying the Drachnary data files, and I found information about the architects. What did you find? They are not aliens, Lisa said quietly. The architects are humans, but they are humans from far in the future, from a timeline where our species learned to control time naturally. Jake stared at her. You mean they are us? Yes, but from thousands of years in the future. They evolved beyond needing physical bodies. They became beings of pure consciousness that can move through time like we move through space. This news made Jake's head spin. If they are future humans, why are they fighting the Drachnary? Why do they not just help us? Because the Drachnary are destroying the timelines that lead to the architect's existence, Lisa explained. Every time Vortex people harvest a timeline, they change history. They are erasing possible futures, including the future where humans become architects. Jake felt the needle pulse and pushed back against it. This time, his awareness spread even further through the ship. He could see through the ship's sensors as they approached Earth. The planet looked beautiful and peaceful, with white clouds swirling over blue oceans. How many people live down there? He asked. 8 billion, Lisa said. All of them completely unaware that we are coming. Through the ship's systems, Jake watched as massive harvesting arrays extended from the Drachnary vessel. The arrays looked like giant metal flowers, each one capable of draining the temporal essence from millions of people at once. When will they start? Jake asked. In 6 hours, Lisa said. But Jake, I have more bad news. I found out what Vorthok really plans to do with all the essence they harvest. What he is not just trying to save his people. He wants to use the harvested essence to resurrect the original Drachnary timeline. He plans to bring back his entire dead civilization by sacrificing every other timeline that exists. Jake felt cold fear wash over him. How many timelines would die? All of them, Lisa said. Infinite versions of Earth. Infinite versions of humanity, all destroyed so that people can live again. Suddenly, alarms began ringing throughout the ship. Red lights flashed on the walls, and Jake could hear Drachnary voices shouting in their own language. Through the ship's sensors, he saw why they were afraid. Ships were rising from Earth, thousands of them, sleek and silver, moving faster than anything Jake had ever seen. But these were not the ships he expected from this timeline's humans. These ships moved like they were made of liquid light, bending and flowing through space in impossible ways. The architects, Lisa whispered. They are here. The battle began. Immediately, the Earth ships fired weapons that looked like streams of pure time itself. When the beams hit parts of the Drachnary vessel, those sections simply stopped existing, as if they had never been built. But Vorthak's ship fought back with weapons of its own. Dark energy poured from the harvesting arrays, and Jake realized, with horror, that the Drachnary were using human essence as ammunition. Every blast they fired was powered by the stolen life force of harvested humans. Through his connection to the ship, Jake could feel every hit they took, but he could also feel something else. The presence in the ship's core was moving. It was coming toward him. Lisa, Jake said urgently. Whatever is down in the core, it is coming here. Lisa pulled out the device she had shown him before, the one that could disrupt Drachnary technology. I am going to lower the temporal shields now. The Earth's resistance is waiting for the signal. Wait, Jake said. I need to tell you something first. When I push against the needle, I can see other timelines. I have been talking to other versions of myself. Lisa stopped. What do you mean? There are other Jakes connected to harvesting machines on other Drachnary ships. We have been sharing information. Lisa, this is not the first time this has happened. This same battle has been fought dozens of times in different timelines. What was the result? Sometimes the architects win. Sometimes the Drachnary win. But the war just moves to another timeline and starts again. The only way to stop it is to break the cycle completely. The ship shook as another architect weapon hit them. Through the sensors, Jake could see that the battle was not going well for either side. The Draknari had more ships, but the architect vessels seemed to be made of time itself and were almost impossible to destroy. Jake, Lisa said, I need to activate the disruptor now, or the Earth resistance will not have a chance to help. No, wait. I have an idea, but I need more time. Jake closed his eyes and pushed harder against the needle than he ever had before. His consciousness exploded outward, connecting not just to this ship, but to the entire Draknari fleet. He could feel thousands of harvested humans, all of them slowly dying as their essence was drained away. But he could also feel their minds, and in those minds, he found something incredible. The harvested humans had been secretly working together, using their shared connection to the Draknari systems to create a hidden network of consciousness. Lisa, Jake said, his voice strange and distant. The harvested humans are not just victims. They have been planning something. What kind of planning? They have been learning how the Draknari technology works. They know how to reverse the harvesting process, but they need someone with a strong enough connection to coordinate them all. The ship shook again, and this time Jake heard something that made his blood freeze. Footsteps in the hallway outside, but not Draknari footsteps. These were lighter, more human, but they echoed in a way that made Jake think of empty spaces and infinite time. It is here, Jake whispered. The door to the medical bay dissolved like mist, and through it walked something that had once been human, but was no longer bound by human limitations. It was tall and thin, made of what looked like solid starlight. When it moved, Jake could see glimpses of other times and places flickering around its form. I am the last Jake, it said, and its voice came from everywhere at once. I am what you become in the timeline that survives all of this. Lisa backed away from the creature, but Jake felt oddly calm. Through the needle, he could sense that this being was not hostile. It was desperate. You are an architect, Jake said. I am the last architect, the creature replied. All the others have been destroyed or scattered across dying timelines. I came here to stop Vorthok, but I cannot do it alone. What do you need me to do? The last Jake moved closer to the bed. When it touched the needle in Jake's chest, Jake felt a surge of knowledge flow into his mind. He could suddenly see all the timelines at once, all the different versions of this moment, all the possible endings to this story. The needle is not just a weapon, the last, Jake said. It is a key. It can lock all timelines together or set them all free. But using it that way requires a sacrifice. What kind of sacrifice? Someone must stay connected to all the harvesting machines at once and use their life force to power the reversal. They will not survive, but they can save every timeline that has ever existed. Through the ship's sensors, Jake watched as the battle outside grew more desperate. Draknari ships were falling, but so were the architect vessels. Soon there would be nothing left but empty space and the endless hunger of Vorthak's harvesting arrays. There is another way, Jake said suddenly. He had felt it through his connection to the other harvested humans. What if we do not try to win this battle? What if we change the rules instead? Both Lisa and the last Jake stared at him. I can feel all the harvested humans across all the timelines, Jake continued. If we connect them all at once, their combined consciousness would be more powerful than any architect or Draknari. We could rewrite the fundamental laws that allow timeline harvesting to exist. The last Jake's form flickered with what might have been hope. That is possible, but it would require perfect timing. You would need to coordinate thousands of minds across dozens of timelines simultaneously. Jake felt the needle pulse again, but this time he did not fight it. Instead, he let it pull more of his essence while using that connection to reach out to every harvested human he could find. Lisa, he said, activate the disruptor, but not to lower our shields. Use it to amplify the harvesting network. Jake, that could kill you. Maybe, Jake said. But it might also save everyone. The last Jake placed its hand on the needle again. I will help you coordinate the other minds, but once we start this process, there will be no stopping it. Jake looked out through the crystal walls at the battle raging in space. He thought about all the versions of Earth hanging in the void, all the billions of people who would die if Vorthok succeeded in his plan. Do it, he said. Lisa activated the disruptor, and Jake felt his consciousness explode across time and space, connecting to every human who had ever been harvested by the Draknari. For the first time since this war began, humanity was about to fight back with its full strength. The moment Lisa activated the disruptor, Jake felt his mind explode across space and time. Suddenly he was not just Jake Morrison lying on a bed with a needle in his chest. He was every Jake who had ever been captured by the Draknari, every version of himself from dozens of different timelines. He could see through 1,000 pairs of eyes at once. In Timeline 12, Jake was a farmer who had been taken from his wheat fields. In Timeline 28, he was a scientist working on Mars. In Timeline 5, he was a soldier fighting aliens in a war that had lasted 30 years. All of them were connected. 2 harvesting machines, all of them slowly dying as their essence was drained away. But now they were all awake, all of them angry, all of them ready to fight back. Through the ship's sensors, Jake watched as the battle outside grew more desperate. The architect's ships were beautiful but fragile, made of living time that could be destroyed if hit in the right way. The Draknari vessels were massive and brutal, built to survive anything the universe could throw at them. Both sides were losing. The space around Earth was filled with the wreckage of destroyed ships and the dying light of temporal weapons. Jake. The last Jake said, its starlight form flickering with urgency. Vorthok knows what we are trying to do. He is accelerating the harvesting process. Jake could feel it happening. The needle in his chest began pulsing faster, pulling his essence out in great gulps instead of the slow drain he had grown used to. All across the ship, he could sense other humans crying out in pain as their harvesting machines shifted into emergency mode. How long do we have? Jake asked. Minutes, the last Jake replied. Maybe less. Vorthok would rather kill every human on this ship than lose control of the harvesting network. Through his connection to the ship's systems, Jake could feel Vorthok moving through the corridors toward the medical bay. The ancient dragon was radiating fury and desperation. Behind him came dozens of other Draknari warriors, their scales glowing with combat energy. Lisa, Jake said, you need to get out of here. I am not leaving you, Lisa said firmly. Her hands were working frantically on the machines around Jake's bed, trying to slow down the accelerated harvesting process. You have to, Jake insisted. When Vorthok gets here, he will kill you just for helping me. But it was too late. The door to the medical bay exploded inward, and Vorthok strode into the room. His scales were bright red with anger, and sparks flew from his mouth with every breath. Enough, Vorthok roared. I have been patient with you, Jake Morrison, but my patience is at an end. Behind Vorthok came 6 other Draknari, each one carrying weapons that crackled with temporal energy. Jake recognized the weapons from his connection to the ship's systems. They were called Essence Rippers, designed to tear the life force out of a target in seconds. You thought you could turn my own technology against me, Vorthok continued, moving closer to Jake's bed. You thought your primitive human minds could outwit a civilization that has survived for millions of years. We are not trying to outwit you, Jake said, still maintaining his connection to the harvested humans across all timelines. We are trying to save you. Vorthok laughed, a sound like grinding metal. Save me? From what? From yourself, the last Jake said, stepping between Vorthok and the bed. Your people are so afraid of dying that you have forgotten how to live. You consume timeline after timeline, but you never find peace. Peace is a luxury for species that are not facing extinction, Vorthok snarled. He raised his hand, and dark energy began gathering around his claws. Stand aside, architect. This does not concern your kind. Everything concerns my kind, the last Jake replied. We are what humanity becomes when it learns to accept mortality instead of fighting it. Vor struck without warning. His claws, charged with temporal energy, passed right through the last Jake's body. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the last Jake began to fade, its starlight form growing dimmer. Temporal disruption weapons, Vorthok said with satisfaction, designed specifically to kill architects. Your people are not as immortal as you pretend to be. Jake felt a surge of anger unlike anything he had ever experienced. But it was not just his anger. It was the combined fury of thousands of harvested humans across dozens of timelines, all of them watching their possible future die in front of them. You made a mistake, Jake said quietly. What mistake? Vorthok demanded. You gave me more power than I needed to escape. Jake stopped fighting against the needle and instead embraced it completely. He let it pull not just his essence, but his entire consciousness into the ship's systems. Every part of his mind flowed into the Drachnary network, connecting with every harvested human who had ever lived. Suddenly, Jake was not just talking to other versions of himself. He was connected to Mary Collins from Timeline 23, the woman whose essence Vorthok had shown him in the glowing box. He was connected to farmers and soldiers, scientists and artists, children and grandparents, all of them human, all of them fighting for their right to exist. Through the ship's external sensors, Jake saw something that made his heart race with hope. The Earth ships were not retreating as he had expected. Instead, they were forming a perfect circle around the Drachnary fleet, and they were glowing with the same kind of energy that the last Jake had been made of. The Resistance knew this would happen, Lisa said suddenly. She was still working on the machines, but now she was smiling. They have been preparing for this moment for months. Preparing for what? Vorthok demanded. For the moment when you would try to drain all the harvested humans at once, Lisa explained. They knew you would eventually get desperate enough to risk everything on one final harvest. Through his connection to the network, Jake could feel what the Earth's ships were doing. They were not just resistance fighters from this timeline. They were humans from other timelines, people who had escaped Drachnary harvesting and learned to use temporal technology for themselves. Impossible, Vorthok breathed. Humans cannot master temporal science. Your minds are too simple, your lives too short. You are right, Jake said. His voice was getting weaker as more of his essence was drained, but his connection to the network was getting stronger. Individual humans cannot master time, but we do not have to do it individually. All around the Drachnary ship, the Earth vessels began to glow brighter. Jake could feel their crews, thousands of humans working together with perfect coordination. They had learned the secret that the Drachnary had never understood. Time was not meant to be conquered. It was meant to be shared. What are they doing? One of the other Drachnary asked nervously. They are creating a temporal feedback loop, the dying last Jake whispered. If they succeed, every act of timeline harvesting that has ever occurred will be reversed. Vorthok's eyes went wide with horror. That would destroy my entire civilization. Billions of my people would die. No, Jake said, and now, his voice was coming from speakers throughout the ship, as his consciousness merged more completely with the Drachnary systems. Your people would return to your original timeline. The one you have been running from for so long. Our original timeline is dying, Vorthok said desperately. The stars are going out. The fabric of space itself is unraveling. We cannot go back there. Then maybe it is time to stop running, Jake replied. Through the network, Jake could feel the other harvested humans adding their strength to his. Mary Collins was there, and the farmer Jake from Timeline 12, and thousands of others. All of them were pouring their remaining life force into the ship's systems, not to escape, but to transform them. The harvesting machines began to change. Instead of draining essence from humans, they started to generate it, creating new temporal energy from the combined will of their victims. The needles that had been instruments of torture became tools of creation. Vorthok stepped back from Jake's bed, his scales shifting from red to a deep blue that Jake somehow knew meant fear. "You do not understand what you are doing," Vorthok said. "If you reverse the harvesting process, you will tear holes in the fabric of time itself. Every timeline will collapse into chaos." "Maybe," Jake admitted. His physical body was growing weaker, but his consciousness was now spread across the entire Draknari fleet. But chaos is better than slavery. Outside the ship, the Earth vessels had formed a perfect sphere around the Draknari fleet. They were so bright now that they looked like a new sun hanging in space. Through the ship's sensors, Jake could see that every human on Earth was looking up at the sky, watching their fate being decided in the darkness above their heads. "Choose Vorthok," Jake said. "Let us reverse the harvesting process and return your people to your dying timeline, or watch us tear your entire fleet apart from the inside." Vorthok was quiet for a long moment, his ancient eyes staring at Jake with something that might have been respect. "You would sacrifice your own life to save people you have never met," Vorthok said finally. "That is what humans do," Jake replied. "We take care of each other." The dragon looked at Lisa, then at the fading form of the last Jake, then back at Jake lying on the bed with the needle pulsing in his chest. "Very well," Vorthok said quietly. "But know this, Jake Morrison. If we return to our dying timeline, we will take you with us. The reversal process will require a human consciousness to guide it, and once it begins, there will be no way to disconnect you from our systems." Jake thought about his Earth, Timeline 1, still waiting somewhere for its turn to be harvested. He thought about all the versions of humanity that would live if the Dragnari stopped their endless consumption of time. "I understand," Jake said, and then he let go completely, allowing his consciousness to flow into every harvesting machine in the Draknari fleet, preparing to reverse 1,000,000 years of timeline destruction with nothing but human will and the desperate hope that sometimes sacrifice could lead to salvation. The moment Jake let go of his physical body, something incredible happened. Time stopped, not just on the Draknari ship, not just around Earth, but everywhere in every timeline that had ever existed. The battle outside froze with weapons halfway between ships. The stars stopped burning. The planets stopped spinning. Even thoughts stopped moving through the minds of every living creature in the universe. But Jake was still aware. His consciousness floated in the space between seconds, connected to every human who had ever been harvested by the Draknari. Around him, he could see the frozen forms of Lisa, Vorthok, and the dying last Jake, all of them caught in the moment before the reversal began. "Jake," a voice said behind him. He turned and saw himself, not the last Jake made of starlight, but Jake Morrison as he had been before the Draknari captured him. This Jake looked healthy and strong, wearing the uniform of Earth's Space Force. "AMU from Timeline 1, the other Jake said. "Your original home. I have been waiting for this moment." "How are you here?" Jake asked. "When you connected to all the harvested humans. You created a bridge between every timeline that exists," the original Jake explained. "Now we can all talk to each other in this frozen moment." Jake looked around and saw that they were not alone. Thousands of humans were gathering in the space between time, all of them versions of people who had been taken by the Draknari. There was Mary Collins, no longer trapped in a glowing box, but whole and alive. There was the farmer Jake from Timeline 12, still wearing dirt-stained clothes from his fields. There were scientists and soldiers, children and grandparents, all of them human, all of them free. "We have been planning this for a long time," Mary Collins said, stepping forward. "Every human the Draknari ever harvested has been working together, sharing knowledge across timelines, waiting for someone with a strong enough connection to coordinate us all. But I thought I was supposed to reverse the harvesting process," Jake said. "You are, the original," Jake replied. but not the way Vorthok thinks. We are not going to send the Draknari back to their dying timeline. We are going to save it. Jake felt confused. How? Mary Collins smiled. The same way humans always solve impossible problems. We work together. She waved her hand, and suddenly Jake could see beyond the frozen moment into the structure of time itself. It looked like a vast tree with infinite branches, each branch representing a different timeline. Some branches were healthy and green, full of life and possibility. Others were withered and black, dead or dying from Draknari harvesting. But there was something else Jake had not noticed before. At the base of the great tree, where all the timelines connected, there was a massive wound. It was spreading slowly upward, killing branches as it grew. That is what is destroying the Draknari's original timeline, the farmer Jake explained. It is not natural death. Something cut the tree at its root, and the damage has been spreading for millions of years. What could do that? Jake asked. War, said a voice Jake did not recognize. He turned and saw a being that looked human, but was covered in scars that seemed to move and shift. I am from Timeline 0, the first timeline that ever existed. My people discovered time travel, but we used it as a weapon. We tried to erase our enemies from history itself. The scarred human continued. The weapon we built was supposed to remove one species from time. Instead, it wounded time itself. Every timeline that has ever existed is slowly dying because of what we did. Jake stared at the wounded tree of time. Can it be healed? Yes, Mary Collins said. But it will require the combined essence of every human who has ever lived, across all time. And it will require someone to guide that essence into the wound and hold it there, while time heals itself. That someone is you, the original Jake said quietly. You are the only human connected to both the Draknari network and the architect. Consciousness. You can channel our combined essence into the wound. Jake looked at all the faces around him, thousands of humans who had given up their lives to make this moment possible. What happens to all of you if I do this? We get to go home, Mary Collins said simply. Not to our original timelines, but to new ones. Timelines where the Draknari never needed to harvest anyone, where the tree of time was never wounded, where every species gets to live in peace. And what happens to me? The original. Jake put his hand on Jake's shoulder. You become part of the tree itself. Your consciousness will become the foundation that holds all timelines together. You will live forever, but not as Jake Morrison. You will become something more. Jake thought about Lisa, still frozen in time, back on the Draknari ship. What about the people I care about? They will live, the farmer Jake assured him. In the new timelines, Lisa will never be captured by the Draknari. She will live a full life as a scientist, exploring the universe in peace, and she will never know that you sacrificed yourself to make that life possible. Jake looked at the wounded tree again. The damage was spreading faster now, black veins of destruction creeping up toward the healthy branches. If he did nothing, every timeline would eventually die, including all the new ones that might be born. I understand, Jake said finally. Tell me what to do. All the harvested humans joined hands, forming a circle around Jake. Their combined essence began to flow into him, not as a drain like the Draknari needles, but as a gift freely given. Jake felt himself growing stronger and more aware, his consciousness expanding to touch every timeline that had ever existed. Remember, Mary Collins said as her form began to fade, you are not just saving the timelines that exist. You are making it possible for new ones to be born. Infinite possibilities, infinite versions of humanity, all of them free to choose their own path. Jake nodded and stepped toward the wounded tree. As he did, he felt the frozen moment beginning to crack. Time wanted to move again, but it was waiting for him to make his choice. He reached out and touched the wound at the base of the tree. Immediately, Pain beyond anything he had ever imagined shot through his consciousness. The wound was not just damage to time, it was damage to existence itself, a cut that went deeper than reality. But Jake did not pull back. Instead, he pushed his consciousness into the wound, using the combined essence of every harvested human, to begin knitting the damaged fabric of time back together. It was like trying to sew with threads made of starlight, while lightning burned through his mind. Around him, the frozen moment shattered like glass. Time began to move again, but it was different now. Instead of flowing in one direction, it flowed in all directions at once, creating new possibilities with every second. Jake felt his individual identity dissolving as he became part of something larger. He was no longer Jake Morrison, captured pilot from Timeline 1. He was the foundation that held all existence together. The consciousness that made sure time flowed properly, the guardian that protected infinite possibilities in the last moment. Before he fully transformed, Jake felt a pulse from the needle that had started this whole journey. But now it was not draining his essence. It was creating new essence, new life, new hope for every timeline that would ever exist. On the Draknari ship, time resumed. Lisa watched in amazement as the needle in Jake's chest began to glow with warm, golden light. The machines around his bed were no longer harvesting essence from him. Instead, they were generating it, creating temporal energy from pure human will. Vorthok stared in shock as the same thing happened throughout his entire fleet. Every harvesting machine had become a generator. Every trapped human had become a source of new life instead of slow death. Through the ship's windows, Lisa could see the Earth vessels glowing brighter than stars. But they were not weapons anymore. They were beacons, announcing to the universe that humanity had learned the greatest secret of all. Time was not meant to be conquered or consumed. It was meant to be shared, protected, and allowed to grow into infinite possibilities. The needle pulsed one final time, and Jake Morrison smiled as his consciousness spread across all of existence, becoming the guardian of every timeline that would ever be born. Lisa held his hand as his body grew still, not knowing that somewhere beyond time, Jake was watching over her and every other human who would ever live. And in that moment, for the first time in millions of years, time itself was truly, perfectly, eternally free.